Hi, I'm attorney Keith Johnson, and welcome back into the Lawyer's Lounge. You know, I've been thinking about doing a series about the criminal justice system, but in a way that you've never seen before. You know, Hollywood is very, very much interested in what we do every day. And so is the general public. I mean, if you think about it, the shows, the series, the movies that depict the crime, that depict the trial, that depict jail. All these things have been a part of the American culture for a long time. But I want to talk about the criminal system from the other side. I want to take you behind the bar, from the time that the crime occurs to the final verdict and the consequences that come from those decisions along the way. So we're going to title this series Behind the Bar, an inside look into the criminal justice system. There will be several episodes with several different themes and stages of the process. In between, we'll have guests and other inspirational stories because it's still the Lawyer's Lounge. We're still going to talk. We're still going to think deeply. We're still going to talk about our faith. But this will be the spine of season 2, walking you through each stage from start to finish, from my perspective, with personal stories, statistics, and just a conversation between friends. I invite you to chime in, send us DMs at Keith B. Johnson Law on Instagram or LAW_YER_lawyer on my personal Instagram, because it's all connected. So let's jump into it here in the Lawyer's Lounge. Crime is as old as time. Think about it. The first crime I remember hearing about was in Genesis, in the Bible, Cain and Abel. Right after the creation, right after the fall, the first crime was a murder, if you believe the Bible. Cain killed Abel because he was jealous of the reaction that God had to Abel's offering. There was a judgment, there was a punishment, and the case was closed. Well before laws, well before statutes, well before all this government involvement, you had crime. Let's fast forward to the ancient Egyptians. There's historical documentation of crimes being recorded, like assault, like theft, like dishonesty, in the papyrus records that have been retrieved from thousands of years ago. Then you fast forward to the ancient Greeks and Romans. Trials were a spectacle. People would come from all over the community to watch people debate about the merits of the allegations. And then we fast forward to what we would perceive to be our modern court system that derives from medieval Europe, where for the very first time, crimes were determined to be against the king, the crown, the government. And the king had a responsibility to ensure peace and tranquility for the citizens of his kingdom. Thus, the state begins to prosecute those who violate the laws of the kingdom. And that's where our American system is derived from. So crime is as innate to humanity as birth and death. Now, you may be saying, well, what does that have to do with me? I would submit that we all have committed crimes in our lives. Before you get appalled, before you get offended, let me give you some examples. I call these the level 1 crimes. Speeding. Don't tell me you have never gotten a speeding ticket or a warning. because in the state of Georgia and in many states, it's still classified as a criminal offense. They can put you on probation for it. They can technically arrest you for it. Many times they don't. It's at the officer's discretion. Illegal U-turns, rolling through that stop sign. I'm just pulling into this space to run into the store real quick. I know I'm not supposed to park here. Stay in the car. I'm coming in real quick. Those illegal parking violations, yep. Come on to the criminal side. And it might not be a big deal because it really isn't. But technically speaking, you've committed a crime. You've committed a violation against a criminal statute or rule. Well, let's go into the level 2. Because you may say, level 1, that's not a big deal. And it's not. But let's test your criminality. What about driving home after, that drink at the function, at the fundraiser, at your boy's house? You're just watching the game. Well, did you know that in a lot of states, including Georgia and South Carolina, they have what's referred to as driving under the influence, committing a less safe act. So if you had any alcohol, one drop, and you speed, or you roll through that stop sign, or you run that red light, or you don't put your signal light on when you change lanes, you've committed a less safe act, a citation. You've had alcohol. You're not drunk. That can be charged with DUI, and it's charged with DUI each and every day in this country. Does that make you a criminal? What about having an open container? Texting while driving, we all do that. Don't you tell me you don't do that, because you do. What about that prescription that doesn't belong to you, but your significant other or your mom or says, here, just take this for the pain. It ain't yours. You got your name on it. You didn't get a referral. That's a crime. Failure to update your address when you move within a certain amount of time. Literally, that's a crime. None of this sounds criminal, but all of it is criminal. So let's get the stigma out of the way about crime. Yes, there are varying degrees of crime. Absolutely. People who hurt people need to be dealt with. They need to be punished. Absolutely. But anybody can be a criminal, and I would submit that we all are criminals in some way, shape, or form. But the difference between a regular person and a criminal defendant can be one moment. Cases are born or begin in two different ways. We have the lane where you have the long investigations, where they are surveilling people, where they are watching people, where they may have an informant. We see a lot of these with our drug investigations. We see a lot of these with our financial fraud and tax investigations. And then we have those great majority of crimes, the larger bucket, I would say, where it's spontaneous, where the crime literally occurs within a matter of moments. We're going to talk about how these two lanes still lead to the same outcome. Whether it takes 6 seconds or 6 months, the system still treats you the same. So let's talk about these street crimes. And I would say that these are our more spontaneous crimes. It's where you have adrenaline going, you got chaos, you got people everywhere. Some of these are the domestic violence cases, the arguments, the fights, the shootings, as I said, the DUIs, the things that literally occur in a matter of moments. Roughly 70 to 80% of homicides occur within a matter of moments, within a matter of seconds. And out of that number, over 70% involve someone that you know, a family member. Total stranger crimes are not as prevalent as people would have you believe. I know we teach our kids stranger danger, and I understand that, and it's the right thing to do. But most of the time, in my experience, and the numbers bear this out, Violent crimes are committed by people who you know or who you're familiar with. I had a case back in 2016. I was representing a 58-year-old gentleman who we'll call Rob. He was married, had a stepdaughter, living a normal life. He was having issues with his marriage. He suspected his wife was not being faithful to him. But he couldn't prove it, and they were up and down. Well, one day, during an argument about something totally unrelated, she said to him, "And that's why I'm sleeping with such and such. You ain't no good anyway. If it wasn't for these kids, I would have been left here." That's what she said to him. And in a split moment, he reached into the drawer, he aimed a gun, and he shot her in the back of the head. She wasn't even facing him. She was on the computer. And they were arguing. The kids were on the other side of the house. And just like that, he ruined his life. We tried the case. The best I could do was get him voluntary manslaughter in the heat of passion. That's the best I could do. But he still has to face a lot of time in custody. Heat of the moment. Most of these situations occur very quickly. According to the FBI and DOJ data, the majority of violent crimes, assaults, homicides, domestic violence, occur during arguments, interpersonal disputes, intoxication, or moments of emotional escalation. So think about that. That's where crimes usually start. And it makes sense. And I'll be honest with you, it's harder to get away with a crime now than it used to be when I began practicing law in 2009. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because we are always under surveillance now. Always. If you think about it, our cell phones are big recording devices. They tell the phone companies where we are. If you get in trouble, the police can determine your location. And guess what? They don't have to ask you for permission. They can get a warrant signed. The judge signs off on it. They send it to the phone company. I've seen the phone company turn over all this data that you thought was yours to keep. It's not yours. You know, when you're riding around in most cities and towns now, each intersection has a camera. Here it's called a flock camera system. They read license plates. So they know where you're going. They know when you're out and about. You ever wonder why that ad pops up on your phone after you were talking about, I think we need a new vacuum cleaner? and you are on your phone and you get these ads for vacuum cleaners, which I probably will have now on my phone. Your phone is listening. It's all surveillance. So it's harder to get away with things now than it used to be, where it was just, did anybody see me? Did any person see me? No, the machines see you. The government sees you. So we have a second layer of cases where it's an investigation. And those cases involve a buildup. I just had court on a case where the police, during my cross-examination, admitted that they put a tracker on my client's car. He ran into the store real quick, actually a restaurant. He was in there for just a few minutes. They were following him visually, and then they stuck this tracker on his car. You may say, how can that happen? I mean, it's the size of a quarter. Well, a judge signed off on it. They did a controlled buy. What's a controlled buy? Those are the tools that law enforcement can use in these longer investigations when we're on this slower track, not a spontaneous crime. And when we're talking about putting that tracker on a person's car, that means that they can watch you. They know where you're going every time you go somewhere. And so that's a part of the surveillance process. Now, those longer road cases, let's think about it like this. Those are the cases where we have fraud alleged. Those are the cases where we have, for example, the PPP loans back during the COVID pandemic. I had a lot of cases like that. I mean, I had a lot where we'll call her Rose. Rose was a sweet lady. Let me tell you, sweet. I can't stress that enough. Love her to death. Rose was told she could get some quick money. All she had to do was submit some documents and she was gonna get a check. And like most people, they hear check first. They don't hear everything else. And so at that point in time, she falsified some information on the loan application. So her tax return did not match the loan application. And the government was able to do their homework and see, well, you said that you made, for example, $30,000 on your taxes. But on your loan, you say you made $150,000 and you have 10 employees and you don't even own a business. We've already given you the $25,000, $30,000. Now you find yourself in federal court, just like that. So crimes can occur in many different ways and for many different reasons. I've also had those stories. And at the time of this recording, it is around tax season, okay? So take this as a gem. Do not let just anyone do your taxes, please. Because I've heard this time and time again, and we get these cases and they become federal cases because it's federal taxes. You're not going to be prosecuted by your local DA's office. You're going to be prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Don't let someone tell you all you got to do is sign right here. No. You sign right there. Those are your tax returns. You are now on the hook for that. And so I had a case down in Statesboro. My client, I believe, was gullible. She let someone file their taxes for her. And anytime a tax preparer is going to want, several $1,000s to do a personal return, I'm not trying to get my CPAs mad at me. I want you to get your money. I've got the best one, Jason Smith, shout out. But on a personal tax return, if they're charging you $5,000 to $7,000, that should tell you something. You're getting back more than probably what you are entitled to. So I had a case like that where she was being watched. Her tax returns were being scrutinized. And now she was on the hook for tax evasion. And she couldn't say, well, I don't know anything about taxes, because guess what? She signed it. She said that all this information is true and accurate. And so cases can begin slowly, or they can be very much in a split second. Way before I get a client, I have to inherit what has happened before I got involved in the case. Now, many times the police can make an arrest without a judge signing off on a warrant. And you may say, well, wait, how does that happen? There's something called probable cause. Is there enough evidence that there's a high likelihood that you probably are the suspect? So we arrest people on a probability. So when the police get to the scene, they have to determine what happened. A lot of times these situations are emergency situations. So the law does not require them to go and get a warrant if they have probable cause. Probable cause means there's a high likelihood that you are probably involved in this situation. That's why we arrest people. That's why I always caution, just let's take a step back before we judge based off an arrest. In a lot of these cases, you make the arrest and you build the case. Witness statements, surveillance video. All those things are the narrative that's created. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. There is a narrative, though. What the general public sees as the gospel truth is really the notes, impressions, and statements collected by an interested party, the police, the investigator. He's doing his job, but it's only one side of the story. And so whenever you see that a person has a warrant against them, just keep in mind that only one side of the story has been presented to either the police or to the judge who signs off on the warrant. Because in those slower cases that I described earlier, the judge has to receive information in order to be satisfied that an arrest warrant is appropriate in this kind of case. And that's how it should be. But check this out. The judge only hears one side of the story. There's not a defense attorney in there saying, well, actually, my client has an alibi. Or actually, my client was not the aggressor. The judge hears one side. And on that one side makes a determination. And we'll get to this in a few weeks. But the grand jury only hears one side too. So our system is not perfectly balanced at every stage. We eventually get there once you're formally charged, but you got to be formally charged first. So that's why we are starting this series with the crime and how the crime evolves and the history of crimes. Because let's take the stigma away from crime. Because we hadn't even gotten to the punishment yet. And then at this point in time, after an arrest warrant has been issued, now the police have to do their job. They have to find the person if they're not already in custody, or they have to submit the case file to the prosecuting attorney's office, and then they take the case from there. And that's kind of where we really think about when we think about a case starting. You think about a person being taken into custody, and you hearing those magic words, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you at no cost to you. And what you say can and will be used against you in court. Those are the Miranda warnings. And I would say not just can be used against you in court, it will be used against you in court. And I've said this many times, and I will always say this. You don't owe law enforcement a responsibility to discuss anything with them. They have a job to do, a very important job, a job that I respect 100%. But if you're the suspect, you should not speak without an attorney. Why? Because everything that's happening from that scene, from that time period, will be used against you, will be part of the record, will be something that your attorney will have to inherit and will not be able to take back once you have crossed that line. So probable cause does not mean proof. It's just authorization for the government to act. So, detectives don't solve cases in 40 minutes. I don't care what Law and Order tells you, right? They don't know all the facts at the very start of the case. I don't care what crime show you watch, whether it's Criminal Minds or back in the day, NYPD Blue. It just doesn't work like that. So my question is, why is the general public in Hollywood so interested in crime? Is it because it's forbidden? Is it because it's sexy? Is it because it takes us away from our own problems? Whatever the reason is, you gravitate to documentaries, to these series, to these movies. Keep doing it. Because it garners attention to something very important. Because seriously, I encounter people in the criminal justice system all the time who are scared, who are shocked, who don't know what to do. It's a bit of an unknown place. And so the more exposure that we bring to it, behind the scenes in a very real way, the more educated we can become, the better decisions we can make. We can knock down stereotypes and generalizations because everybody has committed a crime. We just want to make sure that the process is fair. And so as we journey through this Behind the Bar series, I want you to kick back. I want you to relax. I want you to bring your thinking caps with you. And I want you to really see the reality of the criminal justice system in the United States. Until next time, salute.